It's laughable that you would, or anyone would describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. It's equally,
standing up for it.
It's equally laughable to use the word dictatorship at Davos and aim that at President Trump. In fact, I think that's absurd. But I'm going to step aside from that constructive criticism and instead answer your question.
Yep.
And I'm going to be substantive here. President Trump, if he's the next president, for that matter, I think whoever the next conservative president is going to take on the power of the elites, which I've mentioned earlier. But the thing that I want to drive home here, the very reason that I'm here at Davos, is to explain to many people in this room and who are watching, with all due respect, nothing personal, but that you're part of the problem. Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y. Take immigration. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. They're right. I guess the favorite at the World Economic Forum is climate change. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change, so much so that climate alarmism is probably the greatest cause for mental health crisis in the world. The solutions, the average person know, based on climate change are far worse and more harmful and cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves. China, the #1 adversary, not just to the United States, but to free people on planet Earth. Not only do we at Davos not say that, we give the Chinese Communist Party a platform. Another supranational organization, the World Health Organization, is discussing foisting gender ideology upon the global South. These are practices that are under review, if not being rejected, by countries in Northern Europe. The new president, especially if it's President Trump, will, as you like to say, trust the science. He will understand the basic biological reality of manhood and womanhood. And do you know why? Not because of retribution, not because he's a dictator, but because he has the power of the American people behind him.
I love it. Hear, hear. Amen and amen. That was absolute fire from Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation. And he rained that fire down on the demons of Davos, no less. I mean, he was at the World Economic Forum saying those things, and he declared right before them, right before these technocratic tyrants, in no uncertain terms, that their time is up. Their time is up. In fact, I'm going to show you how that man, Kevin Roberts, is actually in charge of replacing upwards of 10,000 positions in the administrative state of Washington with solid MAGA conservatives on day one of President Trump's inauguration. This is amazing stuff, and I'll show you exactly how it fits perfectly with precisely why Trump is absolutely crushing it in the primaries and is poised, as even the establishment admits, he is poised to defeat bumbling Biden in an absolute landslide. Greetings, everyone. It is live stream Friday, a very snowy live stream Friday from where I am, about 20 minutes away from bumbling Biden's basement here in Delaware. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell on and subscribe. But we are live on both YouTube and Rumble. Unfortunately, as many of you already know, or some of you will quickly find out, those of you who are on YouTube, our super chats have been disabled. Our super chats, by which you normally ask me your questions and send me a very generous gift, of which I'm just always so grateful, that has been disabled. And that is because we have been completely and totally demonetized. This channel, as we speak, has been totally demonetized, and big tech's ongoing effort to separate us, to disrupt our daily communication with one another, and make us all feel like we're alone and helpless, defeated and deflated. And yet, what these big tech overlords did not consider was that you patriots are not so easily intimidated. You, my dear friends, upon hearing of that demonetization, you have stepped into the gap. You came to our rescue. Literally thousands of you have come to our aid and support and have stuck it to big tech by making the courageous decision to join our Insiders Club, where we have direct access to one another that can never, ever, ever be interrupted by big tech overlords. So today, you can still ask me your questions. I'll answer each and every one during our snowy live stream here on the East Coast. But instead of super chats, just click on the link below. Sign up for our Insiders Club, and you can ask me all the questions you want via the Insiders Club platform. And I'm going to return the gift here. Many of you have been so generous and kind as to graciously put in a $10, $20, $50 in the super chats whenever you ask the question. And I can't thank you enough for that generosity. But today, if you sign up for Insiders Club, you can ask me all the questions you want for the next month for just $5, for the price of a big cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? For the fraction of the cost of what you normally graciously give me, you can ask me as many questions as you want for just $5 in the month. It's the least I can do to show my appreciation for you guys as much as you've done for us. So click on that link below right now. Join our Insiders Club. Send me your questions. It'll be my honor to answer them on this live stream right here, right now. And, again, I never tire of saying this. From the bottom of my heart, you are my heroes. You are the reason why I have so much hope for the future. The way you stand in the gap, the way you never stand down. I just can't thank you enough for everything you've done for me and for this channel. All right, enough. Let's dive right in here. So let's start with the current state of the race for the upcoming primary in New Hampshire just days from now. The latest Anselm poll that just came out shows Trump with a nice bump from his dominance in Iowa. Trump is now at 52% with a 14-point lead over Nikki Haley. Anselm is being corroborated by the latest Suffolk poll, very, very historically accurate poll for the New Hampshire primaries. They have Trump clocking in at 50% with a 16-point lead over Hillary Haley. So Trump at this point is cruising to a solid win in New Hampshire, double-digit win, which should do it. That should solidify. I was talking with Rich Barris of the People's Pundit yesterday. We're going to have that interview up today. It'll be on later today. You'll definitely want to check it out. And Rich just gets into the numbers and shows you exactly what was behind Iowa and how it is paradigmatic for the nation at large. You're going to it's going to so encourage you and get you ready for the weekend. But Rich was saying that he thinks the primary will be officially over as of next Tuesday, as of Tuesday night. There's just no realistic path to victory in any way, shape, or form for anyone not named Donald J. Trump. You may have seen that DeSantis has basically given up on New Hampshire. Remember, he spent $60 freaking million in Iowa. He visited every single one of Iowa's 99 counties, and he got shellacked. He got stomped by 30 points. He's not even trying anymore in New Hampshire. I mean, he's down to single digits. It's sad. He's literally hitting Chris Christie territory. I mean, it's that bad. He's trying one last gasp in South Carolina, but he may hang up the gloves on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. We'll see. I mean, his campaign's unraveling. You've probably seen that. Staffers are quitting. They're being laid off. He's run out of money. I mean, it's just frankly sad at this point. So we're going to have to do a post-mortem to dedicate. I wouldn't do a live stream, but we'll have to dedicate a video, a post-mortem on DeSantis and what happened there. And it's just so sad. It's so sad. He was the hands-down winner of 2022 midterms. He was the champion. He was awesome. He was the height of his political career. And then just a bunch of worm tongues got into his ear and told him, yeah, man, take on Trump. We're going to take out Trump. Those indictments, oh, they're going to sink him. We promise you. Take him out. And that's exactly what we started to see after the Mar-a-Lago raids, which he could have played such an amazing leadership role in pushing back against, given that it happened in Florida. And he never did. And now he's just sounding like Nancy Pelosi at the time. I mean, it's such a dramatic political fall. We're going to have to look at that and garner some lessons from that. Hopefully he's not irredeemable at this point, but we'll see. For her part, Hillary Haley, she continues to get tons of funding because she's getting it largely from Democrats, particularly Democrat oligarchs who are desperately trying to make her the nominee of the Republican Party because they know bumbling Biden has politically collapsed, right? They're reading the writing on the wall. They see Biden losing with literally every single Democrat constituency. Biden is losing Latinos. Biden is losing blacks. Biden is losing women. Biden is losing the college graduates. He's losing the working class, both white and non-white. He's losing Arab Americans in droves over his policies in the Middle East. He's losing urban voters because of his incompetence at the southern border, right? Biden is literally hemorrhaging his own voter base. And our establishment elite recognize that no one with these approval ratings so low, we've never seen approval ratings so low. I mean, Jimmy Carter is skipping, well, kind of, seeing this like, I'm no longer the lowest of the low. No one in Biden's poll position right now can pull this off, no matter how many shenanigans they try to pull on election day. Again, gang, you have to get this. This is so, and again, Barris gets into this in our video later on today. This is going to stun you. The urban vote is now in play. The urban vote is now in play. We have the data on this. Trump is eating away at the Democrat margins in the urban vote like no other Republican has ever done. Remember, Obama won with the non-white working class by a 70-point margin. Right now, as we speak, Biden has a 10-point margin. The urban vote has absolutely collapsed on Biden. And if the Democrats don't have the urban vote, if they don't have those 70-point margins, 80-point margins, they've literally got nothing. It's over. They've thrown all their eggs, their political eggs, in one urban cosmopolitan basket. And Trump in particular, not DeSantis, not Haley, Trump is eating away at those otherwise colossal urban margins. And so Democrats recognize Biden is toast, with Trump garnering a massive urban turnout together with a colossal exurban rural turnout. It doesn't matter what happens in the suburbs. It doesn't matter what happens among suburban women that DeSantis and the National Review crowd are so worried about. Doesn't matter. With a new coalition of MAGA urbanites and MAGA ruralites, Trump and MAGA become a supermajority. Democrats are seeing that. And so they're doing whatever they possibly can to try to thwart that supermajority, and yet still, they know, beat Biden, it's inevitable, by putting Hillary Haley in as the Republican nominee, so at least they can have a neocon in office. Neocons and neoliberals are basically the same breed. They're the same thing. So they don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, right? Bill Kristol doesn't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, just as long as it's someone who will faithfully serve the values, interests, concerns of the establishment elite. However, more and more of that establishment elite are recognizing that that's absolutely a fool's errand. They are coming to terms with reality. There is no, and by the way, we should expect that, particularly among our economic elite, our economic class, the CEOs of the finance world and so on. They're the ones who they have to deal with reality. They have to deal with numbers. They have to deal with bottom lines. And they're recognizing there is no way on earth Nikki, Hillary, Haley will come within even 1,000 miles of the GOP nomination. And by implication, they are recognizing that Trump is on his way to taking back the White House decisively. Listen to Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan. Listen to him shock CNBC pundits with his assessment of Trump.
Great hand, but when people say MAGA, they're actually looking at people voting for Trump, and they think they're voting, and they're basically scapegoating them, that you are like him. But I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. And if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. Mm-hmm. He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. I don't like, but he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why. Not like it's a binary thing. You're supporting Trump, you're not supporting Trump. Why are you supporting Trump?
It's hard to hate 75 million of your fellow Americans.
I agree.
It's done quite
and, the Democrats have done a pretty good job with the deplorables, hugging onto their Bibles and their beer and their guns. I mean, really, could we just stop that stuff and actually grow up and treat other people with respect and listen to them a little bit? And I do think the economy will affect, and I think this negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign.
Yeah.
Now, let me translate all that for you, gang. All right? Let me translate that for you. Trump is going to kick Biden's ass. And I, as the CEO of one of the major financial corporations in this nation, I have to make sure I position that corporation into a favorable alignment with the new administration. That's what you just heard. That was a bunch of fancy schmancy way of saying one thing. Our forecasters at JP Morgan are predicting Trump is going to win this in a blowout. And he's not just going to win in a blowout. This is going to be an election like we've never seen. Biden is going to go the way of the Hindenburg. And I want to position JP Morgan in such a manner so as to continue to have as much favor from Washington as I can be given with this incoming new administration. There you go. Those could have been subtitles basically under what he said. Everything he said basically was code. What you just heard was an admission. The CEO of JP Morgan admitting that Biden is toast and Trump is going to win this election in a blowout. I promise you. Please hear me out. Listen, I promise you. If Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan thought that the results were going to be the reverse, if he actually listened to Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid at MSNBC and believed that Trump was going to crash and burn and Biden was going to win in a landslide, if he actually believed that, he would never, ever in a million years ever have uttered anything even remotely like that at Davos. He's at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, in Davos. He's saying these things. He would never say that if Biden was up by 10. He'd be going, oh, good, these MAGA guys. I mean, I can't believe what they did in Iowa. How stupid they possibly be. What a bunch of knuckle-dragging moron insurrectionists. Oh, forget it. They're the past. They're Neanderthals. They're going to die out. The future belongs to us. You know he would never have said that. But what is he seeing? What are his analysts and predictive forecasters seeing? Well, they're not just seeing Biden's abysmal poll numbers. They're seeing what's happening in Argentina, right, with the celebration, the amazing election of Javier Milei. Make sure you check out my video on analyzing his speech. I mean, talk about raining fire on the demons of Davos. That speech was a masterclass in classical liberal economic theory, liberal in the good sense of the term. Absolutely stunning. They're seeing what happened in Argentina. They're seeing what's happening in El Salvador with Nayib Bukele with 90% approval rating. They're seeing what's happening throughout Europe, particularly in the Netherlands with the recent election of Geert Wilders. They're seeing what's happening in France with the rise of National Rally. They're seeing the German left-wing government literally in shambles, ready to crash. They're seeing the farmers and truckers protests growing like wildfire all across the continent. They're realizing that the globalist ruling elite are on the chopping block this year in 2024. This is a populist revolt like never before. And JP Morgan is clever enough and honest enough to position themselves in a favorable way to the new populist White House administration that's coming in November. Or technically January 2025. That's what you just heard. And he's not alone. You probably saw this. Mike Pence, former chief of staff, Nick Ayers, he's just endorsed Trump. The new Nevada Republican governor, Joe Lombardo, he's also just endorsed Trump. And of course, they're following on the heels of the endorsements of both Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. Here, in fact, is Ted Cruz giving his full endorsement the day after Trump's dominance in Iowa.
John, it's great to be with you. Listen, last night was decisive. It was a dominating victory for Donald Trump. I got to say, there's no place like the Iowa caucuses. I know it intimately. The men and women of Iowa, they take their responsibility incredibly seriously. They scrutinize the candidates. It's an amazing process, and I'm a big believer in letting democracy play out. Well, last night it played out, and I got to say, Trump's victory was across the board. He won 51% of the vote. He won 98 of the counties. Congratulations to President Trump on that dominating victory. And at this point, I believe this race is over. So I am proud to endorse Donald Trump for president of the United States. I look forward to supporting him enthusiastically because I think it's time for the Republican Party to unite, for us to come together. We've got to beat Joe Biden. We've got to beat this disastrous cultural Marxist agenda in the White House. We've got to retake the United States Senate. We've got to hold the House. We got to come together and win. And with the results last night, the people have spoken. It's time to move onward to victory in November.
Again, what's so key here, what you've got to get in terms of interpreting what you're hearing here, it's not necessarily... These are not necessarily, Cruz, Rubio. These are not necessarily people who can't wait to line up to endorse Trump. These are politically savvy politicians who recognize the inevitable. This massive lineup to endorse Trump is not just a recognition that he's winning the nomination. Remember, Paul Ryan certainly had no problem distancing himself from Trump winning the nomination. In fact, you had Republican after Republican after Republican in October 2016. After the Billy Bush tapes came out, they were doing everything they can to try to get another nominee. They wanted nothing to do with Trump. This isn't just a recognition that he has got this nomination in the bag. It's the recognition that he's winning in November. If they believed what so many in the legacy media are trying to convince us of, like MSNBC, right, that Trump is guaranteed disaster in November, if they actually believe that, they would be on air right now lamenting this victory in Iowa. They'd be doing what Liz Cheney does. They'd be through their incantory chants bringing back the ghosts of J6. Isn't this horrible? Isn't this terrible? Oh, we have a most likely convicted felon as a nominee. There's no way he could possibly would. They would sound like the DeSantoids on Twitter. They'd be tearing their hair out, weeping and gnashing their teeth. The sky is falling. There's only guaranteeing Biden another term. All the things you hear losers like Romney and Liz Cheney saying ad nauseum. Nope. No, these, unlike Romney and Liz Cheney, these are very politically savvy politicians and CEOs. And they recognize that Trump is poised to absolutely crush it. And they had better align themselves with him if they want to be on the cutting edge of political power over the next 4 years. But it gets even better. Wait until you see what President Trump has in store for day one of his inauguration. This is going to absolutely blow you away. But first, you may have heard about President Trump issuing a dire warning about America and the very thing we depend upon to live, which is the U.S. dollar. Now, if Trump's warning comes true, this could be, in his words, bigger than losing any war. But if Trump's prediction is right, and he's been right about a lot of things, and we do lose our status as the world's reserve currency, imagine how that could impact your retirement savings and your quality of life. So that's why you need to be on the cutting edge here. Take Trump's warning seriously. Click on that link below and go to turleywarning.com right now, because there you'll see what thousands of Americans are doing to help protect their savings before it's too late. Plus, when you click on that link, you even see how to get up to $10,000 in free silver to protect your savings. But don't wait, gang. We may not have long if Trump's prophecy comes true. So hurry up, click on that link below right now, and go to turleywarning.com today. All right. You are going to love it. Let's bring back Kevin Roberts, shall we? Remember Kevin, president of the Heritage Foundation, at the beginning of the video? Yeah, I mean, right, you saw him just raining absolute fire down on the demons in Davos. He has been tasked by President Trump to implement what they're calling Project 2025. Now, Project 2025, we've done some videos on this. This is a holistic, step-by-step plan to immediately and completely rein in and dismantle the woke leftist administrative state, the deep state as we call it, on day one of Trump's presidency. So here's Kevin Roberts explaining what they have planned.
Done with Project 2025 is, as you've heard from Paul and Johnny and Spencer, just a slew of Trump administration alums, is prepare the next president, looks likely to be President Trump, to go into office, and as soon as the oath of office and inaugural address are done, to start dismantling the administrative state. I'm happy to report, as of this week, Steve, that we have over 7,000 people who've submitted their resumes in this conservative LinkedIn. Wow. We need more than that in order to take this bull by the horns. But look, you know that we don't believe in hollow optimism and heritage. I know that you don't either. I'm here in Davos to obviously not preach to the choir, but to read these people the riot act, that we are in the process of taking this country back, and we're also taking back self-governance for free people around the world. And I can't thank you and your staff enough for giving us that voice.
Now, what he's talking about there with the 7,000 resumes is related to Trump's plan to implement what's called Schedule F on the first day of his presidency. What Schedule F does to the deep state is basically like what Order 66 was to the Jedis. Order 66, right, if you remember, is a top secret order identifying all Jedis as traitors to the Galactic Republic, and therefore they all had to be eliminated. Schedule F functions very much the same way. It reassigns federal bureaucrats in D.C. as Schedule F employees, which in effect strip away all of their employment protections, thereby enabling the president to fire tens of thousands of deep state bureaucrats all at once. I believe this was his last executive order of his first term. I think he passed it in, I signed it in October, if I recall, 2020, November, October. But then obviously, of course, with all the chaos following the November 3rd election, it got kind of pushed in the background. But there were several panicked articles in the legacy media freaking out of what the implications could be if Trump were to pull off the second term in all the chaos. A second-term Trump is the deep state's worst nightmare, because not only is he going to fire tens of thousands of these ultra-leftist bureaucrats, by some estimates, they're predicting Trump could fire as many as 60,000 bureaucrats. But this is what Kevin Roberts is getting at. It's not only that Trump's going to get rid of these deep state operatives. He's not going to allow a power vacuum to accumulate. So he has plans to replace them, not all of them, but a portion of them, with loyal ultra MAGA patriots who would guarantee, they would function like an immune system inside permanent Washington to guarantee that America First populism governs the nation for the foreseeable future at the permanent bureaucratic level. And to that end, Kevin Roberts has been tasked with enlisting and recruiting upwards of 10,000 loyal ultra MAGA obviously, they're all going to have to get screened and screened thoroughly. Loyal ultra MAGA replacements for these woke bureaucrats. So the deep state knows that with Trump winning a second term, they know their days are over. He is going to go full animal on them. He is going to shatter the deep state apparatus. It's personal to him. They're trying to take him out in his family. They've gone after his freaking family, his children. He can't wait to dismantle the administrative state, such as the FBI and the other three-letter agencies that will be unrecognizable, hopefully, when he's done. And so is it any wonder they're trying to take Trump out? Is it any wonder they're engaged in this ridiculous lawfare against him? But as we're seeing, everything the establishment has tried to throw against Trump has failed. In fact, it's worse. It's only made him stronger. Trump is poised to win the nomination like no candidate has ever done. He is admittedly positioned to crush Biden in November and then institute a second term unlike anything we have ever imagined. Over to you, gang. Over to you. I want to hear what you have to say as Josh, our moderator, puts together your questions. Remember, if you want to ask a question, because YouTube has demonetized our channel, just click on the link below, join our Insiders Club, and ask me your questions through that platform. It's just $5. $5 a month. You can ask me as many questions and you like. It's my honor to serve you there. Oh, and one more thing.
I'll be back.
That's right. He is back. And of course, we're back. It's time to show our support and celebrate the great return by clicking on that link below and getting your very own Trumpinator 2024 bobblehead in preparation for Donald Trump's glorious reascendance to the United States presidency. This collectible bobblehead from Proud Patriots is made with the highest quality material, and it really is a must-have for any Trump fan who wants to send some energy towards what's shaping up to be the most glorious political comeback in history. Now, gang, don't wait. There are just a limited number of these collectibles. You don't want to be caught paying way more later on eBay from someone who bought one now. So whatever you do, don't wait. Click on that link below and show your support for Trump 2024 today. All right, I got mine. Where's mine? Come here, Mr. Bobblehead. Here's my Mr. Bobblehead. Isn't he cool? And like I said, I love the box that comes in. Look at that puppy. Oh, the box itself is a collectible, I think. Should I put my my Mr. Bobblehead here? Why don't we do that? There you go. The Trumpinator. He is so cool. Love him. All right, gang. What do we got here, Josh? What do we got? Steve, why is such a lack of coverage of the farmers' protests in France and Germany by the legacy and secondary media? Secondary, if are you meaning the alternative? I think the alternative's been doing okay with it. Obviously, we've been covering it's huge, and like you said, France has just started as well, along with Germany. We're even seeing in Romania, which is very interesting as well. It's for the same reason. They blacklisted or blacked out the pro-Palestinian protests that knocked down the gate of the White House over the weekend. The media is not about reporting. They're not about coverage. They're about propaganda. That's what the media is all about. It's even in the academy, they've studied it in that the media, it's known as agenda setting theory for the media. And it's more commonly referred to as advocacy media. But agenda setting theory basically argues when all is said and done, Western democracies do not operate so much by the media following a particular party in politics. It operates by the political parties following the media. The media actually generates the power. The media creates the narratives and the stories that politicians align themselves with, either as favorably or in terms of some kind of controlled opposition, like the Republican Party is. And they do so because they know they can't compete with what's known as the framing and the priming significancies in the media. So the media frames a story that gives you the interpretive lens by which to understand the so-called facts and events. And those frames deliberately attempt to prime certain dispositions and inclinations within the consumer of this information so as to have a particular orientation towards politics. And it's always towards the left. Always. Republicans know this. This is why they play the game. This is why they're so pathetic as an opposition party. They follow the New York Times. They follow the Washington Post. They follow CNN and MSNBC and NBC and the like to a certain extent, Fox. But even Fox ends up following this more dominant AP New York Times driven framing and priming. This is what's known as agenda setting theory. And they don't report news. They create a perception of reality. And if an event doesn't fit into that left-wing perception of reality, either it gets mocked or ridiculed, or it like Trump, or it gets pushed into the darkness. It's not featured at all. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the agenda setting theory determines what's covered, not objective reality. Thank you, Steve. Michael, question. El Presidente Milei's speech was inspiring. Is this the year we finally rid our world of the demons in Davos and their crony communism? Well, it certainly looks like it's the beginning of it. That's certainly the way he presented it. That's certainly the way we're seeing the president of the Heritage Foundation presenting it, the CEO of JP Morgan. They're all saying, look, guys, this is a new world that's rising. They're all saying it in their own different ways. This is a new world that's rising. And it's a world that is pushing back against a one-size-fits-all political and economic ideology that's being superimposed on the people by a governing political and economic elite. We are done with that. We are going to push back against that. Again, what we have to understand is the modern world, starting around the 18th century, particularly with the European Enlightenment and the enthronement of scientific rationalism as supposedly the one true way of understanding reality, the sidelining of religion, culture, custom, and tradition as savage and as ignorant and as tribalist and increasingly as bigoted and sexist and all kinds of phobic. That process of putting in scientific, technocratic, managerial class to run and organize and orchestrate and socially engineer every aspect of society like a massive corporation, that has reached its end. It's coming to its climax. We're seeing how brutal it's getting, how insane it's getting, how nutty it's getting, such that, I mean, you'll literally have ruling elites tell you that the border crisis we're having right now is Trump's fault. I mean, you had a congressional testimony. It fell in front of a congressional committee, trying to, a young whippersnapper, 20-something. He was supposedly an expert in immigration and border issues and so forth. And he was trying to make the argument, oh, everything that we're seeing now is all the fallout of the chaos of the Trump years. And one of the Republican congressmen said, "Sir, have you ever visited the border?" And this young whippersnapper literally looked at him and said, "Well, I've seen pictures of it on TV." He's never visited the border. He's a so-called expert. Just let this hit you. He is an expert on immigration, and he has never visited our southern border. That's this top-down managerial elite arrogance that thinks it can run things by telling you that something, just like, again, like we heard at the beginning, that X is true when in point of fact, Y is true. I would actually say non-X is true. They're totally contradictory. So yes, I think, and scholars have been arguing, obviously this channel is dedicated to analyzing the process by which the modern secular liberal globalist experiment has reached its end. It is cracking up. And people like Javier Milei and Geert Wilders and Marine Le Pen and Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, they are all, Jimmy Åkesson. I love to give a shout out of the Sweden Democrats. They're always so overlooked, but they're one of the far right, so-called nationalist right, populist right parties in power right now. The True Finns in Finland, Vox in Spain, Giorgia Meloni in Italy. They are all, Brexit itself, they are all indicators of this breaking up of this crony communist demons in Davos world. So, yeah. So I hope 2024 is the year. But again, it's probably going to be more incremental. But at some point, it is just going to go the way of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union, and it's just going to fall. Thank you, Michael. Brian, why is Trump always so confident? Isn't it true? Yeah. I mean, it's I would say drugs, but he's alert. He hates drugs. He hates alcohol. He hates smoking. It is amazing. I think he recognizes the moment, to be honest with you. I think he recognizes the moment. I've met him once, very, very briefly. So I've never been able to sit down and really chat with him to see the extent to which he really does recognize the moment we're living in, that we are coming to pretty much to the end of the liberal globalist world, and that he represents the rising up of a very, very new world. It's very impressive. I got a Rumble chat sent to me. Rumble chats don't appear on our screen, unfortunately. This is from Texas Dad. Thank you so much, sir, for your Rumble chat. Have you caught this hypocrisy? Fannie Willis lamented that MLK Jr. was targeted by the FBI for his indiscreet affairs. Yet when it's Hillary, the FBI, and Steele dossier, she fails to see the injustice. Yeah. That's so good, Texas Dad 99. That's so good. Fannie Mae is the living embodiment of why the permanent political class, the elite establishment, is collapsing. How on earth do they expect us to believe that demonstrably corrupt people can administer the law fairly? It's really that simple. The reason why Trafalgar found that 80% of the country distrusts our judicial system, 80%, 8 out of 10, it was 79%, if I recall exactly, distrusts our judicial system, believes it's inherently unfair and that it benefits the rich and powerful. Fannie Willis is the living embodiment of those sentiments. How on earth can they possibly expect us to believe that the most corrupt people imaginable can administer justice fairly? Obviously, they can't. By definition, they're corrupt. So, she is as corrupt to the core. That Fulton County case is collapsing. I mean, that thing is freaking imploding right in front of our very eyes. It is insane how fast that thing is falling apart. They were turning it. I mean, she's going to get booted off, I think, inevitably, despite that disgusting rhino, Brian Kemp, governor, who's, by the way, in Davos right now, his unwillingness to actually fight back. He is. What are they? What are they called? The Washington. Who are the guys who play against the Harlem Globetrotters? Are they the Washington Capitals? I forget what they're just controlled opposite. They're just there to look clownish. That's what that's Brian Kemp wing of the Republican Party. They are every bit in bed with Davos as anybody else. They're every bit as dependent on the same checks stroked to them as are stroked to any other Democrat by the donor class. They're disgusting. And he wants to take Trump out. It's not happening, but that's so it just shows the corruption at literally at all levels. So they're very, very good, Texas Dad. Great observation. Rich Smith, good to see you, Rich. How could roughly 1/3 of New Hampshire Republican voters vote for Nikki Haley? Hillary Haley, she's horrible. Because number one, it's New Hampshire. It is secular northeastern New Hampshire. I grew up in Connecticut, and I'm even here in Delaware. It's still relatively northeast. Very, very secular, extremely secular. It's one of the key differentiations of whether you vote conservative or liberals is your orientation towards secularity versus sacredness. And they're bringing in a lot of Democrats. And they'll call them independents. But again, Rich Barris has the data. We talk about it in our interview later on today. The independents they're bringing in are all center-left independents. They don't vote Republican. I know an independent who has never in the Northeast who has never ever voted Republican. I just smile and say, "But you're not. You're the exact opposite of an independent. If you're always voting Democrat, why don't you just become a Democrat?" Yeah. So that's all. I think you're seeing that third is the center-left world that tends to dominate New Hampshire. Now, again, New Hampshire's Republican Party has pivoted. They figured out how to be successful given New Hampshire demographics and their their political proclivities. They figured out how to be successful. They have a triumvirate. They have the governor's mansion in both branches of the legislature. But as far as that being indicative of and representative of the nation as a whole, actually, Iowa is far more representative of the nation as a whole, especially when you bring in the battleground states. New Hampshire isn't a battleground state. New Hampshire is blue. New Hampshire is going to go blue. So in many ways, for me, I don't even know why we do a primary in New Hampshire, just because it's not reflective of the Republican possible supermajority MAGA demographics. So that's going to be much more in the Midland, the South, and the West. Vaughn Cassie, good morning, Dr. Steve. How does Trump avoid having Haley as VP? The establishment always forces their hand with who is VP, Pence, Biden, etc. Yeah. I get you. So I think this is going to be an extraordinary indicator in terms of how weak the establishment has become versus how strong they remain. So if Nikki Haley were to become VP, which, by the way, Don Trump Jr. has already said there is no way in hell that's going to happen. And Trump is very family oriented because he's very loyal, old school loyalty oriented, very kin oriented. And so Don Trump Jr. obviously has the inside scoop there. By the way, I think that's a lot of Nikki Haley surrogates pushing that, just like they not just like comparable to the propaganda that the DeSantoids were throwing out every single day. They still do, although they're dropping like flies at this point. But it's just their way of trying to increase her numbers and her prospects and her plausibility. It's actually trying to make her be seen more in MAGA light to maybe shave off some ambiguous Trump voters. But in the end, I don't think this is going to happen because I think the establishment's becoming very, very weak. I think they're sensing it. It's a strange kind of thing. It's, when we saw this with the fall of the Berlin Wall, it really is when they're the weakest that they become the most brutal. That's the irony. The brutality, the dictatorialness, the tyrannical nature of a regime really comes out when they feel most rightly threatened. And so I think they're doing everything they possibly can to try to convince us they are in control, when in point of fact, all of these antics are ultimately admissions that they feel more vulnerable than ever. I don't think Nikki Haley is going to come anywhere near the White House. I don't think that at all at this point. And if she doesn't, if that plays out, then we're going to see that the establishment has very little sway over a Trump second term. Trump is making it clear to the establishment there's a new sheriff in town. And there's going to be a new establishment. Remember, you're always going to have an establishment. That's the Pareto principle. You're always going to have a pyramid, a societal pyramid, where there's going to be a top elite, a top 1-2% calling the shots. You're always going to have, doesn't matter if it's in Little League, right? You have an umpire, you have coaches. You're always going to have some kind of leadership up there. But the key is that leadership has to be aligned with the values, interests, and concerns of the people. The moment it becomes disparaging of the people's values, interests, and concerns, the moment it becomes disdaining of those values, interests, and concerns, and seeks to superimpose some alien, foreign, bizarre, elite value, interests, concerns on the people, i.e. wokeness or what have you, that's it. I mean, that's when you start to see the populist revolt, and the establishment is going to have to get in line with a new MAGA movement that should, if it's successful, should change our politics for a generation. Awesome, Vaughn. We'll see. Missy, San Antonio cops are now taking part-time side hustles, helping Catholic charities smuggle illegals through San Antonio. With this continuing disregard for the rule of law, how can we clean up the corruption? There's no one to call when they're all in on it. Well, I don't know, Missy. We'll have to see with that, because I mean, you've got Ken Paxton holding the line, Attorney General, who, by the way, he's a new vice president name that's floated around. Some insiders said that Trump is considering Ken Paxton. I will just give you some inside information. When I was at Mar-a-Lago a couple of months back, Ken Paxton was there. So that'll be very interesting. He's holding the line, it seems to me. The Biden administration is threatening to take legal action against Texas for all their barriers and for all of the efforts that they're making and calling out their troops, their National Guard, and so forth to protect the border. That I think the powers that be at Texas are reading the writing on the wall on that one. They are doing what they can to close the border. If there's some cops on the side who are helping a Catholic church that at this point is just a bunch of woke nonsense, at least when it comes to the border and understanding of nation and civilization. That's just sad, but I don't think you have to despair. They're not all in on it. I wouldn't go there. Again, what we have to, I mean, our emotions can get the best of us. And I'm not trying to be condescending here too, because I fight it myself. Our emotions could get to the best of us where we verbally enunciate a reality that we verbally enunciate a state of affairs that's far removed from the reality. If you draw a pie chart, for example, yes, there is a sliver here that are working. Then you do a Venn diagram. You do another pie chart, and and which is all colored in to help out the illegal immigrants and so forth, say the Catholic Church, and you can overlap them a bit. Or you take one pie chart and another pie chart, that's better, and you overlap them a bit. There might be in that center there where the powers that be are in on it. But then there's going to be this huge other side with Greg Abbott, Ken Paxton, and so forth, who are pushing back. Again, I don't think Abbott has done it any way he's done anywhere near the power he should do. But even Katie Hobbs in Arizona is pushing back. Eric Adams, Brandon in New York, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, they're pushing back. Everyone, even the Democrats, know this can't continue. So, it's keep it in line. If you hear about San Antonio cops helping out part-time, hustling with Catholic charities, just weep for them, pray for them, because that's just, again, what they're doing, I believe what they're doing increases and encourages illegal immigration behavior that puts many of those people, particularly the young women, at considerable risk of horrific harm. It is, and the children and the like, it is just, they should not be encouraging this. That it is one of the most detrimental things that we could be encouraging. I think what Biden has done is a humanitarian disaster. And I think what these powers that be that are overseeing, as you bring up, are contributing to that humanitarian disaster, all behind the veneer of virtue. Thank you, Missy. Vicky, hey, Vicky, what does everyone think of Byron Johnson as VP? Yeah, I like Byron Johnson a lot. Again, good Florida, I think, right? He's a Florida representative, brings Florida into the fold, although that's not going to be a problem. Trump is so far ahead in Florida right now. Florida's so solid red. So Byron Johnson would be terrific. It's going to be awesome. Let us know in the comments below if you guys like that. Neil, did you notice JP Morgan had a Ukraine flag on his lapel, not the U.S. flag? Still, how do we get rid of the bad judges? The people have little input who get a judgeship for life. It's the political people who get to choose. How can the people have say in the third branch of the government? That's a good question, Neil. I have to do a little more research on that. So we have seen it work. We're seeing the judiciary getting reined in a lot of nationalist populist experiments. Obviously, this was the big thing that was happening in Israel prior to October 7th with Bibi Netanyahu's Knesset majority changing the law. In Israel, it was even worse. Their Supreme Court appointed itself. They appointed their own successors. And so you had a bunch of libs who just kept appointing more far left libs. So the country in Israel is going far right, for lack of a better term, right? Just using our current Overton window. We would just say nationalist populist or even religious theocratic right. But Israel's been going that direction where its courts have been going far to the left. And it's because of this disconnect between the people and these elite establishment managerial structures. So he made it to so that judges will now be appointed by the Knesset, so that whoever's in a ruling power and who has sort of the ethos of the nation can put in judges to reflect that ethos and the will of the people. The Law and Justice Party in Poland was doing something comparable, because they had basically communists as judges, hangovers from the Berlin Wall days. Viktor Orban has done something comparable. Of course, Vladimir Putin, he has completely restructured the Russian ruling system so as to more or less maintain a very, shall we say, just a very seamless structure for affirming populist sentiment. That's, a lot of people who've never read a book on Putin or never studied Putin. That is his key to success. His key to success was being able to align oligarchs with the people. and by being the mediator between oligarchs and the people, representing the people's values, primarily by getting the oligarchs to spend all their money in. They can have all the power they wanted, all within limits, but all the power they want, but all the money they accumulated must be kept inside Russia and used for the sake of the advancement of the Russian nation. He's been able to balance that out, and he's been able to get the courts to align with that, uniquely Russian vision. Narendra Modi in India has been doing something comparable. So all of this is to say is we're going to have to do a bit of a meta study on what has worked around the world and other nationalist populist experiments, and then how can we bring that to bear here in the United States so as to rein in an admittedly, not entirely, but an admittedly rogue judiciary. Keep in mind, Trump was doing an amazing job. One of the ongoing effects, lingering consequences, for lack of a better term, of his presidency is he appointed more federal judiciary than I think his two previous predecessors combined in, I believe, either total or in their first terms. And he's remarkably shaped the judiciary in extraordinary ways. And then the Supreme Court right now has a pretty solid conservative majority that literally did the unthinkable. They overturned Roe v. Wade, the Dodd decision. So, I mean, I think in the end, it's bottom line, it's getting a president in there who is going to just appoint and obviously a favorable Senate that is going to approve. So you need a Republican majority in the Senate, which we should get if Republicans stop playing controlled opposition. If they get behind Trump, we should get it, because the Democrats are basically having to defend 2 seats for every 1 seat the Republican is defending, or it might even be bigger, 3 seats. I think it's 3 seats for every 1 seat. I think it's 21-7, something like that, in terms of what they're going to have to defend. But if we get that, and Trump, obviously, again, now it's personal with him. He's dealing with judges now. If Trump can get in there and just totally appoint MAGA hardcore judges, that'd be awesome. The question is whether there is any, to be honest with you. The question is whether our law schools are so pathetically woke that that they're not churning out conservatives, those who believe in natural law as opposed to positivist law, legalism, the idea that law is itself invented by a managerial elite, as opposed to the idea that law reflects eternal and divine reality encapsulated in Western tradition. We'll have to see. So I think it's a fascinating field of study. I've been wanting to. Was just reading an anthropology on law and legalism. But I don't have enough. I have not done enough research to give you a definitive plan yet. So we'll try to do that. So keep me honest on that one. Keep that question coming. Thank you, Neil. Mark, Steve, what's on the street about the House and Senate outcomes in 2024 election? Any chance the Senate right now to become a majority? Yeah, so that fits in with what we're just talking about. All right, so Mark, this is so here's the deal. Here's the big picture. This is the big picture. Votes for Trump do not necessarily translate to votes for the Republican. We just saw this in the latest Texas poll that just came out, where Trump is crushing it. Trump has got, I think he's up 10 points, right? I think he only won Texas by 6, if I recall, in 2020. He's up by 10. He's up in all demographics, all, constituencies, you name it. He's crushing. Again, it's an indicator. That's an important indicator because Texas is becoming more urban. It's been just like what's happened in Georgia. The reason why Georgia's flipped blue is it's not the good old, rural southern state anymore. It's an Atlanta-based state, with Davos, invited corporations flooding it. That's why we have Brian Kemp over there right now. He doesn't care. He doesn't give a rip. He just looks at his bank account. That's all he cares about. Nothing more. So so it's become much more urban. So even though it has lots and lots of Republicans who are being voted in the rural areas, they're not winning in the urban areas. And so that's why they're not winning statewide elections. Again, Rich Barris talks about that in our interview today. Check that out. He gives you all the data there. The same thing's happening in Texas, although Texas's urban areas are much more conservative. Okay, so even the Dallas mayor right now is a Republican. He flipped. He was a Democrat, and he flipped to Republican. But what we're finding is that Trump is winning the urban vote, or he's better. He is cutting into the Democrat margins unlike any Republican we have seen. Ted Cruz isn't. Ted Cruz is up by 2. Same poll, Trump 10, Cruz 2. And this is what the Republican Party, this is what Boris Johnson couldn't do with the Tories. And the Tories now have imploded as the Reform Party in Britain. This is Nigel Farage's old Brexit party. The Reform Party in Britain has hit double-digit support. It's growing every day, and it may overtake the Tories. Why? Because they are fully 100% on board with the new nationalist populism that made Brexit a reality. And unfortunately, the Tories, technically the Conservatives, in Britain, under Boris Johnson, live in such a different cultural space than the growing working class and urban culture that's putting him into power, that they're failing him every single time. And so Republicans, by wearing the stupid Ukraine lapels, sorry, I just think it's just at this point when we've got our own border, I just don't understand it, right? It's because we're globalists and we think we rule the world. But they're more interested in sending money to Ukraine than they are in fixing the southern border, right? That was Mitch McConnell. Our number one priority is Ukraine. It's not our southern border. It's not bringing manufacturing jobs back home, which, by the way, I think manufacturing is the lowest now it's been since 2000. Now that Biden is given the green light for corporations to farm out their manufacturing to third world countries, right? It's not dismantling the administrative state. Nope, it's Ukraine. The more Republicans talk like that, the more they're going to go the way of the Whigs. So the support for Trump does not translate to support for Republicans. Why would it? So the Republicans are going to have to do. Pierre Poilievre is trying this with the conservatives in Canada. He's doing his best to get these conservatives still live off of this establishment mentality that globalism and modernism and liberalism is the future. Progressivism, they're all progressives, and he's trying to get them to say that's not true. The life does not move in this linear fashion. It's more of a pendulum. Now, I do think, given biblical eschatology, I do think it's moving towards something. There is a directionality to it. But like Petirim Sorokin, the Russian philosopher, social economist, or social sociologist, pointed out, he's a founder of sociology department at Harvard, if I recall. But Sorokin argued it's actually more of a pendulum swing. It's between the sacred and the secular. That's how cultures work. Cultures all have sacred spiritual values, and they all have secular material values. And the ideal is that they're balanced, that there's a perfect balance. I mean, if it's going to be more vertical, right? There's a perfect balance there. But if inevitably things happen that make society go way to the material and the secular, could be a war, could be all kinds of things, but it could be a economic depression, but things happen where people become literally obsessed with secular material things. That is wokeness. That is liberalism. That's emancipatory politics. That's the Democratic Party. What's happening is that's breaking up. And now, instead of just giving you a lighter version of that, which is Hillary Haley, right? Or your establishment Republican Party, we'll give you that, but we're not insane. But we'll still keep everything very material, very progressive, very liberal. Instead of that, we have to understand, according to Sorkin, is the disarray and disillusion and, frankly, the nihilism of secular materialism inevitably involves the pendulum swinging to a rebirth of sacredness and religiosity and populism and nationalism and civilizationalist ideals and the like. And that's what's happening here. That's what Trump is embodying. And the Republican Party they literally have the what do you want to call it? They have the jewel, they have the sweet spot right there to step into. They have the metal to grab to become a supermajority if they would but become a fully Trumpian party. If they would make Trump look moderate when it comes to MAGA, they will win a supermajority. All the data proves it, because it turns on the urban vote and it turns on the rural vote. You bring the urban and the rural together, and you don't even need the suburbs. Suburbs will come, you don't want to get rid of them, but they'll reflect that enthusiasm, and boom, you've got it. It's no longer urban versus exurban. It's now urban and exurban coming together under a single dominant transformative MAGA movement. Until the Republicans get that message, they're going to lose, just like the Tories are losing in Britain. They're going to lose. Why would you vote? Why would you vote for Hillary Light? Why would you vote for Nancy Pelosi Light? Why would you? Why would you vote for anyone even resembling Mitch McConnell? Why? So there you go, Mark. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. David, can Biden undo Schedule F? An executive order can be defeated, right? Yes, an executive order can be undone, and that's what he has done. He has obviously not put Schedule F into force. So, but you won't have to worry about it. But if Trump comes in and enacts Schedule F, Order 66, and starts removing the deep state operatives there's nothing Biden can do. Biden won't even know he's not president anymore. He'll just be here in Delaware sleeping. Rusty, is the U.S. going to sign on to the ominous UN pandemic treaty, which will cede our sovereignty to the demons? I don't know. Careful with the UN does not have a. So here's the deal, and I get what you're saying. When we're talking about UN, we're going to be the power is the WEF. Okay, the UN itself has no power. UN itself is, it is. There's no way around. I know they're a boogeyman to a lot of people, but if you talk to people who are working inside the UN, they are the most pessimistic, glum people on the planet. They don't think they have it. They don't think anyone listens to them. They try to enforce something. It never gets enforced. The opposition party always turns it against them, and it's the WEF that is really their power arm, because the WEF has enlisted. The WEF has basically enlisted a bunch of government deputies. So governments have deputized corporations to do what they can't. They can't do politically because it's politically suicidal. So what billionaires and bureaucrats are doing is they're teaming up and and the bureaucrats are deputizing the billionaires to get this stuff done. But pandemic treaty, that's going to be very, very hard to pull off. My opinion, it's going to be very, very hard to pull off. So I don't even think it matters what Biden ends up doing. Red states are going to rebel like you've never seen. And that's where you get into the sanctuary state, where more and more red state governors are putting up administrative barriers, legal and administrative barriers, to prevent CDC or any WHO or any of these guys from coming in and interrupting our sovereignty. I also believe, as I understand it, I also believe it would not hold up in court. I've heard it put again for reasons I can't quite remember, but there was a very good lecture I was listening to on how a lot of these sort of foreign treaties do not get to ever trump the U.S. Constitution. Obviously, you'd think so, but that has, if something is signed, a treaty is signed that we believe cedes sovereignty to, to say a foreign organization that then impedes on our constitutional rights, by definition, it is unconstitutional and the treaty is null and void. So I don't think the Supreme Court would allow it in the end. So we'll see. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on it, but I don't think it's as bad as we would think. Vicky, question: is there anything that Biden has done to destroy this country that Trump cannot reverse? Well, I hear the echoes of Viktor Orban in my head. We better get this of Hungary. We better get this upcoming This was his pitch to the Hungarian people. We better get this election right, because if we don't, the opposition party is going to bring in all of these migrants, and we can't undo that. Once they get assimilated into our society, that's it. It was very interesting. Viktor Orban argued, we can always undo a monetary policy. We can always undo, a healthcare policy. We can always undo transportation policy. We can't undo migration. Once they're in, they're in. Yeah, you could deport some, and Trump is promising that. But I do think that we are seeing a dramatic demographic change in our country that is not going to be undone. Now, the irony of it for the Democrats is that it happens to be a very conservative Catholic demographic, and they're starting to vote that way. It took a little while, but they're starting to vote that way. It's also a demographic that, as I understand it, based on Eric Kaufman of the University of London's research, it's also a demographic that is most likely to intermarry, to interracial marry into, say, a thoroughly white. So, of course, I'm talking about Latinos, Hispanics, into a European white family. And what we find is 9 times out of 10, once they intermarry into a European white family, they adopt the European white family's politics, which is 60 to 70% Republican. So what we're seeing, for example, in Florida, particularly Miami-Dade, what we're seeing in Texas, is that there is a blowback to opening up the borders to conservative Catholic people who are not interested in voting in woke politicians. Now, again, we have yet to convince Ocasio-Cortez's constituency of that. But what we're seeing in Florida, what we're seeing in Texas, we're seeing in Oklahoma and the like is a constituency, a new political constituency that's come that is inordinately represented, not because of any kind of deliberate migration policy, but simply because of proximity to our border and very, very porous borders at that. That is not something that can be undone. That's going to be a part of our country. But the good news of it is it tends to be more assimilative of traditional European culture, custom, tradition, and therefore is congruent with and consistent with conservative principles. There you go, Vicky. Terry, is there any chance the RNC could get paid off or blackmailed into not running Trump as their candidate? No. 2024, no. It would fall apart, and you would see Patriot Party born literally overnight, and it will turn into the Conservative Party for the 2017 European elections. 2019 European Parliament elections. European Parliament elections, Nigel Farage. This is the last time England, or Britain, I should say, was represented at the European Parliament in Brussels. Their elections, which is this year, by the way, it looks like the Nationalist Populists are poised to win their biggest margin ever. But back then, in 2019, the last time they had elections, Nigel Farage said he could not back the Theresa May Conservative government. They were a disaster. They were sabotaging Brexit. So he formed a Brexit party to be elected, to go to Brussels for the specific purpose of helping to negotiate a clean break from the European Union. And when the party was just 5 weeks old, the election happened. The European Parliament election happened in Britain, and they won. They won 30%. Again, it's a multi-party election. They won 30%. They were by far the biggest. By far, 1 out of every 3 Brits voted for a party that was 5 weeks old. So if the RNC were to do something like that, I think you'll see a Patriot Party that emerged overnight, and within weeks will be the single dominant party in the country. So maybe that's what we need to happen to finally get rid of these idiot Republicans. Ken, Steve, important on Redacted. They're talking about a military coup to keep Trump out of office. What can be done? Yeah. So, how do I put this? Yeah. So the concern is that there's, again, it just shows you how they don't believe. This is really important for us to get. They don't believe the shenanigans in November are going to work. They don't believe. They think Biden has sunk too far, because everything Biden had going for him in 2020 is gone, right? The mass mail-in chaos, that's gone. We're not going to see anything like that. Well, hopefully, right? You never know, right? Yeah, I know. But chances are, again, this is an admission that they're not expecting us to see anything like that. So they don't have the mass chaos. They don't have, but he's going to bring everything to normal. He's going to bring the adults back in, and Trump's chaos, and we're going to bring order and stuff. The unknown of a Biden presidency is gone. It was a disaster. People like Trump better by far, by double digits. So now it's an admission by the deep state that, holy crap, we're not going to be able to keep this guy from office. So now we need something else to protect us when he gets in. And so the idea here, as I understand it, and Redacted probably got into more, Clayton probably got into more detail there. Obviously he did. But as I understand it, it is basically an attempt to remove military control, at least to some extent, away from civilian control, which would thwart the Constitution. I don't see how they could do it. I mean, Trump, even if they were successful, Trump could easily, or someone on behalf of Trump could easily bring that to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would slap that down. Our military is controlled by someone elected by the sovereign will of the people. It is not controlled by a military diktat. Period. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it plays itself out. But they are so afraid that Trump is going to go full animal on them using the military that they're doing everything they possibly can to try to hamper that. Again, I don't think any of it's going to work. But we'll have to see. You're right. We have to get. This is how desperate these people. You always have to counter-read that. Counter-read everything. When, they're going to launch a coup. So they obviously think he's going to win, right? You counter-read. They obviously think he's going to win. Okay, well, when he wins, let's see what they got. Yeah. And if there were something like that, the country would explode. Right, Trumpinator. Don't forget your Trumpinator. Get your trumpet. Click on that link. I love him. He's so cool. Deep state, deep state are evil, sick people. We need to be prepared. What can be done? Yeah, no, I'm with you. There is no limit to how sick these people are. That's the scary thing. There's no question about that. And we're seeing it even now in Poland. They're arresting former MPs. They're pulling the same thing that Biden's Injustice Department is pulling. So again, it's only the liberal Democrats. It's only the left-wing liberal, WEF sycophants who are the ones who are being dictators. That's the answer. And then what they do is they project. They use projection as a way to impute to others the very crimes they're committing. But what can be done? Vote Trump and do not back down, because they have everybody. They have everything. Deep state and cultural Marxists have control over every lever of institutional and cultural power, but they don't have the hearts and minds of the people. And just ask the Berlin Wall what happens when you don't have the hearts and minds of the people. So we have to stand firm and say, no, you're not, like Gandalf, you shall not pass. And Trump is our symbol of you shall not pass. And if it's like Tucker has said, if they're going to engage in obvious shenanigans against Trump, then it's the people. I don't think, just like I'm trying to get my little Trumpy little better angle. There we go. I don't think the people are going to stand for it in the end. And that's what we saw in Eastern Europe. That's what we saw in Sri Lanka. Remember when they stormed the palace in Sri Lanka? So it's amazing. Remember, there's no matter how many there are of them, there's always infinitely more of the people. That's it. That's what we always have to remember. And our legitimacy crisis for our public institutions has reached such a point that I don't think there's any semblance of legitimation from which they can draw to keep a mass uprising from happening, were they to do something like that. Thank you, Ken. Hi, Jeff. So what are your thoughts about Congress making laws to ban any and all programs coming out? I love it. I love it. I love it. Pierre Poilievre has said that in Canada. Said, but he's limited to his administration as prime minister. He would ban anyone who had anything to do with the WEF from being in his administration. I think that's the way you end up sidelining these guys. Now, keep in mind, you got Brian Kemp there right now, right? Trying to bring as much WEF money, power, and influence into Georgia as he possibly can. He's a scumbag. He's beyond disgusting. And he'd be if he were in any other state, he'd probably be a Democrat at this point. Maybe a Joe Manchin Democrat, but a Democrat nonetheless. He just couldn't win Georgia as a Democrat, at least when he was originally running. And he couldn't have won without Trump's support, if I recall correctly. So, no, I think that would be phenomenal. Again, I think we're going to have to be very muscular in the laws that we're passing from now on. We cannot rely on democratic constitutional republic instincts in the Democrat Party anymore, even in the Republican Party anymore. We just can't rely on that in a way we once were able to when our culture was much more intact and much more vibrant. We're gonna have to be very, very forthright and deliberate and decisive in the use of power in the next administration. Again, we don't want to get rid of our constitutional republic because they're the dictators in the end. That's the hilarious projection that they're putting on Trump. They're the authoritarians. They're the dictators. But we do want to use the full power of the office of the presidency to crush left-wing liberalism in all of its forms. Thanks, Jeff. Jules, Steve, I know Trump wants to stop digital currency. But any chance that we can keep politicians, judges, and big-time donors that we can keep politics in digital currency? That way the people can monitor their spending. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, Jules. I never thought about that. Wouldn't that be interesting? So when you so there is a kind of, I don't know if we'll call it central bank digital currency, but they're requiring politicians to use digital currency while in office, thereby being able to track and monitor all of their economic exchange. I think that's pretty close to brilliant. I have to think about it. I've never thought about it, Jules. That's neat. I mean, again, the transparency element is just so missing, today. How is it that every one of these guys go into office making $90,000 a year, and then just House of Representatives, and then end up leaving making $7 million a year? Your average, and this was from about 4 years ago, if I recall these stats. I haven't picked up on it yet. Your average congressman's salary is net worth is $900,000. Your average senator's net worth is $3 million. I mean, how does that happen? They're not going into office with that kind of wealth. Generally, they're accumulating it while in office, and that makes the swamp a business model. That's in the end. And some people go into entrepreneurialism. Some people get hired by a Fortune 500 country. Some people get elected to politics, the Washington politics. Well, we saw it with Fannie Willis. That's what Fannie Willis is doing, allegedly, right? She was paying her boy toy prosecutor, never prosecuted federal crime in his life. She pointed him to persecute Trump. Paid him, I think, a total of $900,000. It might have been 7 figures, might have hit $1 million. Total inordinate amount of money. As again, this is what she's accused of. She took that money from an appropriations of something else completely different. She took that, paid her boy toy, alleged boy toy, all that money, and then they went on cruises with it. I mean, it's as corrupt as you could possibly get. They went on a Royal Caribbean cruise with it. They've been living their best life on it. So anyway, yeah, I mean, these are corrupt people, and anything that we can do to ensure transparency in public office, it will only go to restore legitimacy, and we need that. We're in a crisis of legitimacy now. It's known as delegitimation. And until we do, we're going the way of the Berlin Wall. The public institutions are going to crumble. They're going to have to get rebuilt, and they will be rebuilt around MAGA. Thanks, Jules. Great observation. Tina Barnes? Is California dead on arrival regarding Trump supporters for changing California back to a more reasonable state policies? It may be. We'll have to see. So the problem with California is it's entirely coastal, urban, cosmopolitan vote. If I recall, it's something like 70% cosmopolitan at this point. So much of its rural area have moved out. They've gone to Texas. They've gone to Arizona. They're going to Idaho. They're just leaving. They've had it. I know you have some standouts like Shasta County in Northern California. It's just hardcore patriot county. They're absolutely amazing. And you do have some possible secessionist tendencies there. But right now, as we speak, the politics in California seems to me are irredeemable. It could change overnight, though. We're seeing it happen in urban areas all across the country. It may even be, again, Trump is polling better in California than he's ever polled before. That's part of the indicators. See how the MAGA immune system, as it were, is really pushing back against this horrible, Biden metastatic disease. So we'll have to see. Trump is winning urban votes more and more. Does that translate to the California urban vote? We'll have to see. Hopefully it does. Again, you've had some pretty monumental and amazing flips in school boards, where the school boards went way too woke and the parents pushed back. Even in San Francisco, 3 school board members of the Unified San Francisco school system were booted out by 70% of the vote, because they were just so they wanted to change names like Abraham Lincoln School, because it was too racist, and so it was just absolutely insane. So we'll have to see it. Right now, California looks like it's pretty solidly blue, but there is a chance that it may go the way of other states if Trump is able to if he's able to tear into the margins of the urban vote. But that's going to be key for California, because California is almost entirely urban vote at this point. Thanks, Tana. Linda, what about election fraud in 2024, especially using AI? Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see with that. It's going to be, they're going to throw everything up. They're going to throw everything they possibly can. My only solace with that is that there have been a number of election fortification in the right way, bills done, election integrity bills that have been passed, including Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin. Wisconsin Supreme Court tossed out 200,000 ballot harvested votes because ballot harvesting is now technically illegal in Wisconsin. That could change. You do have a more liberal Supreme Court now. But Linda, all of these shenanigans they're engaged in right now, just again, from a counter read, tells me they don't think they can pull it off. They can do it when the margin of victory is within, 40,000 votes, which is what we saw in 2020, 10,000 in Arizona, 10,000 in Georgia, 20,000 in Wisconsin. Of those 20,000 largely were all tossed out 2 years after the fact. When you and I just let that hit you with all of the shenanigans, the insane level, unprecedented level of shenanigans we saw in 2020. They still were only able to win by 40,000 votes. Now, and Trump never led a single poll back then. I mean, you had, what was it, Emerson? I forget who they had Biden up by 17 points in Wisconsin. Yeah, Biden won by 20,000 votes, and the Wisconsin Supreme Court tossed out pretty much all of them 2 years after the fact. So they don't think they can pull it off. That's what all these pre-election shenanigans are telling me. They don't think they can pull it off. But that doesn't mean we're not to be vigilant, and we're not to make sure that we are volunteering at every single precinct. Scott Pressler is brilliant with this. Same with Steve Bannon, his precinct strategy. Make sure you're volunteering at your local precinct, and you are literally counting every vote coming in. And you're watching all the machines, you're watching all the digitality, you're watching. If we do that, I think we're gonna be okay. But they're gonna throw everything at us. Steve, how concerned are you about a legitimate above board election if all the other Democratic attempts to bring down Trump fail? Yeah. So again, that's it, Steve. It leads to the same question. All of these attempts tell me that they don't think they can pull the election shenanigans off. That's what they tell me. Again, keep in mind too, the governing elite know that, you saw that with the exit polls in Iowa. 70% of Republicans, 80% of Republicans believe the election was stolen. So, I mean, if they do this again, that's going to reach 100%. It's going to start eking into even independent and Democrat voters as well. So they know that. It seems they seem to think that 2020 was a one and done kind of scenario. They're not going to be able to pull that off. And again, I repeat, with all of those shenanigans, mail-in, you name it, all of it, they still were only able to win by 40,000 votes, by basically the population of Newark, Delaware. And they don't think they're going to be able to do that again. They just don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing any of these shenanigans. So, we'll see. We cannot possibly put our guard down. We've got to have to do everything we can to try to demand a secure election. Nathan, sorry if there's a repeat question. I'm late to the call. After Iowa, DeSantis supporters seem to be very anti-Trump. A lot of his supporters were Trump supporters in 2016 and 2020, but seem to hate him now. Do you see that in an issue with Trump's reelection? Not at all. Not at all. That's the online Twitter world. Those are Trump. Those are DeSantis surrogates. Obviously, they didn't play. It didn't play out a whit in Iowa. It's not playing out a wit in New Hampshire in terms of the primaries. And primaries are generally indicators of how the general election is going to play out. That's the primary model of Helmut Norpoth of the University of Stony Brook, who's done studies going all the way back to the 1930s, 2020 with the exception, of course. But whoever dominates primaries goes on to dominate the general election. That's just the pattern that we've seen over and over and over again. And no, the DeSantis sour grape, DeSantoid sour grapes isn't going to do anything. They might, again, they could say they voted for Trump in 2016. They voted for him in 2020. But a lot of them, it's very strange. There are some disaffected MAGA, like sort of like an Ann Coulter, but they're very idiosyncratic. They're very odd. And they kind of, they walk their own path. They march to the beat of their own drum. That's cool. No problem with it. But it clearly does not reflect the polling at large. So I wouldn't worry about it. And Nathan, again, do you see the border issue becoming a serious conflict between Texas and the feds? Yes. But it's going to, and if Governor Greg Abbott plays his cards right, if Attorney General Ken Paxton play their cards right, they will win that in a landslide, as it were. They will win that battle hands down. Everyone wants the border secured, and they should be doing everything they can to secure it. And the more the Biden administration says, no, you have to stop doing that, you have to stop enforcing the law, the more they're going to look pathetic and ridiculous and not worthy of being in charge. So that definitely bring that battle on. And it should be vocal, and they should have every camera they can get there to and press conferences and so forth to call out the Biden administration for demanding them not to enforce the law and the Constitution. Mark, Steve, what do you think of Carrie Lake as VP potential? Great. Yeah, I think it's great. Now, she's going in on the Senate. They see her now. The polls are coming out. The Democrats collapsing. He's very, very weak. And Kyrsten Sinema is very unpopular. She's turned out to be very unpopular. So Carrie has an amazing opportunity to become senator. I personally would rather see her senator of Arizona than VP. I don't think Blake Masters could even. Blake blew it. Blake didn't run a very good campaign. Whereas Carrie did. I think obviously it was stolen from her. So I would love to see Carrie as senator of Arizona. But she would be great. She'd be an excellent VP. She's terrific. Curtis, why is there not pushback on Biden bossing Israel around? We may end up doing the same against the Houthis in Yemen as they're doing in Gaza. The legit Yemen regime is now asking for help on the ground. No, I'm with you. Oh, gosh. Yeah. You are dealing with the single worst State Department probably in American history. This is a State Department that cannot read the world room, as it were. They do not understand what's happening in the world. They don't understand the Houthis. They don't understand Israel. They don't understand the Palestinians. They don't understand Russia. They don't understand Ukraine. They don't understand China. They don't understand Taiwan. They don't understand anything. So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. But bottom line, and we argue for this all the time on the channel, we are seeing what's known as a civilizationless world rising, where politics is becoming radically re-spatialized. This is very key. Politics is becoming radically re-spatialized, where populations are now reasserting their political control over regions. This is totally the opposite of globalism. Globalism disembeds, it literally deterrorizes political power and puts it in the hands of the few, of the billionaires and bureaucrats that make up the managerial class, and then they rule top down, WEF structure, corporate structure, and the like. That system that became dominant in 1991 after the fall of the Soviet Union, where the United States basically ran the world through the WTO and the IMF and the World Bank, through those institutions that set the rules for how all other nations were to behave. That's the rules-based order. That world has crumbled. That world is falling apart. And in its place, a civilizationalist world is rising, where literal civilization states like Russia, a renewed Orthodox Russia, a renewed Confucian China, a renewed Hindu India, a renewed Ottoman Turkey, a renewed Shiite Iran, a renewed Sunni Saudi Arabia. These are all rising up. We're seeing it in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region, where the last vestiges of French colonialism are getting expelled every single day with one coup after another, because the coups are happening because the people just see their presidents and their leaders as puppets of the French, basically, the French government. So they're getting expelled. And what they're doing is they're reasserting sovereignty. And so for the United States to insert or NATO to insert itself into a re-spatialized political order is to poke hornets. And that's what we have to be very, very careful about in the Middle East. What's happening between Hamas and Israel is precisely that. It is a dispute over space. To whom does this space belong politically? And now they are doubling down on that, because they are becoming more and more civilizationally minded. So as they see themselves as civilizationally totally incompatible with one another. As a matter of fact, Netanyahu has made that argument repeatedly in his speeches over the years, that the Jewish state of Israel is civilizationally incompatible with Hamas and with the Islamic, the more extreme Islamic culture that he is calling the Palestinians characteristic of. Palestinians, on the other hand, via Hamas, are saying that this new renewed theocratic Israel is radically at odds with the civilization of Islam, and as represented by Hamas, and they are clashing. And for us to get involved in that is real dangerous. Sam Huntington warned about what he called cleft areas in the world. Cleft areas where you have overlapping, contradictory civilizations. He said, stay away from them. And by the way, Ukraine was one of them. Stay away from them. Now, we were able to handle it. We were able to handle Yugoslavia. I'm not a fan of what we did to Serbia at all. But we were able to handle the Balkans blow up, because it was still a unipolar world. We were calling the shots. There was no one else who could push back. Russia was led by a drunken idiot in the Kremlin. China was still rising, very much dependent on the West for its economy and so forth, which it's not anymore. Thank you, Biden, by the way. So India, of course, still had the National Congress there. They were all globalists. So there was nobody who could push back. Now there are a lot of people who can push back. There are a lot of forces that can push back, and they would be more than happy to align with one another, like we're seeing economically with BRICS Plus. So what Biden is doing in the Middle East via the Blinken State Department is just a disaster. It's going to be a disaster, and there's no winning. Yeah, no winning. The Houthis will fight us to the end, just like the Taliban did. We will tire out, we will leave, and they will take over. I mean, there's just they know it, they're confident, and they're in it for the long haul. They're in it for the next 1,000 years. That's the power of the sacred in thinking. Whereas we're just worried about the next election. So there you go. That's my assessment of a little bit of Biden in the Middle East. Thanks, Curtis. Jules, I was at every Trump rally in Wisconsin. God bless you, Jules. Awesome. It was a religious experience. It is. I know. I've been to several of them. I know exactly what you mean. Very revival-esque. They love Trump in Wisconsin. Currently, all the Afghanistan refugees are living in Toma, Wisconsin. In the military base, Fort McCoy, the soldiers have to sleep in the snow. They're all housed, fed, and given money. Many are sleeper cells. Do you think that when Trump wins, that's when all hell breaks loose? Good question, Jules. I don't know. I don't know. You would hope that, and this is where I'm talking about, we have to utilize power. and power rightly and wisely. If hell does break loose, that's when you utilize power. I think the restraint Trump showed in 2020 during the summer riots, 2020, I don't think he's going to show that restraint anymore. Now, again, that was with an establishment Republican Party still firmly in power. I have a feeling a return of Trump, a Trump 2024 is going to be it's going to be him going full animal, because again, it's personal now. He's been on the receiving end of this corrupt system, both from what he saw happening in November 2020, as well as the indictments and all the two impeachments. I mean, he's ready. I think he's ready to just break it, which I can't wait. Franklin, is it possible to round up all the illegals and ship them home? Not all. A lot, yeah, a lot. I think they can, Franklin, but not all. And that's going to be, there's no way around that. There's just too many. It seems to me. We'll have to see how it plays out. But he's promising the single biggest deportation program we've seen since Roosevelt. I'm forgetting who he was talking about. He mentioned somebody, another president who had a massive deportation. And that's it, gang. Love you all. Have a warm weekend. For those of you on the East Coast, enjoy the snow. It's beautiful out, actually. I feel like, I'd love to go sledding, but no, I'll prefer reading, staying in a nice warm house and reading. Love every one of you. Again, I'll be on, I'll do a quick video if anything real breaks out. Check out the Rich Barris interview today. That's going to drop later on this afternoon. You're going to love it. Rich is just, it's going to make you so excited for what's to come in 2024 and what's happening all over the country. Love you guys. Have a wonderful week.